Good morning, Your Eminence, Archbishop Christoforous, Your Eminences, Your Grace, Chairman Jim Logothetis, Executive Director Paulette Poulos, members of Leadership 100, and friends old and new, so many. What an amazing few days these have been, the last few days. I specifically wanted to thank everyone that I've spoken to these last few days from so many ministries of the Greek Orthodox Church who have expressed an interest in collaborating together with the Lukumi Make a Difference Foundation. That means more to me than you have any idea. And I very much look forward, under your guidance, Your Eminence, Archbishop Christoforous, to working together with the Greek Orthodox Church and the youth and the young adults to make a difference together in the world. It is now my pleasure and an honor to introduce to you a trailblazer in the broadcasting industry, a born leader and a dear friend. Alexis Christoforous and I met almost 25 years ago when I was a young reporter for the Hellenic Times newspaper. And I interviewed her for a feature story to discuss her, at the time, budding career in broadcasting. Within seconds of meeting Alexis, we discovered that our weddings were 3 months earlier, almost to the day. Mine to Vula and hers to Carl, a week apart in June of the year 2000. And not only that, but unbeknownst to us, at the time, we were all in Positano, Italy, at the exact same days on our honeymoons. We've often joked that we need to go back together for, first we said our 10-year anniversary, now we're saying our 25th anniversary. So Alexis and Carl, we have 4 months to plan. Although we had just met on that fateful day in September of the year 2000, the interview was like a meeting among old friends. And now, 25 years later, that meeting was like a prophecy. Since then, our families have become family. We have become friends prior to having children, and our children have since become great friends over the years as well, and they're all here, right here. I often joke that Alexis's claim to fame is that she is the voice of Lukumi in the audiobooks of my Lukumi children's book series. But in reality, narrating Lukumi is just a cherry on top of Alexis's legendary career. She's now a Gracie Award winner and a multiple Emmy nominee for her broadcasting. Alexis started her business news career at Bloomberg Television and Radio, where she met her husband, Carl. And then Alexis trailblazed through an array of high-profile positions at CBS News, CBS Market Watch, then Yahoo Finance, and for the last several years at ABC News, where she has reported across the ABC News platform, including Good Morning America, World News Tonight, GMA3, ABC News Live, the ABC News Radio Network, and over 200 ABC-affiliated TV stations nationwide. Alexis is the creator and host of Good Morning America 3's award-winning series, Trailblazing Women, highlighting diverse, game-changing women. And she is also the creator and host of Ask Alexis, a weekly segment on ABC News Live in which she answers viewers' personal finance questions. Alexis has also conducted news-making interviews with some of the biggest names in business and politics, including Michael Bloomberg, Richard Branson, Warren Buffett, Hillary Clinton, Mark Cuban, Jack Dorsey, Ariana Huffington, Sheryl Sandberg, Donald Trump, and Meg Whitman, just to name a few. A graduate of New York University and also the LaGuardia High School, the acclaimed LaGuardia High School for the Arts, Alexis has also interviewed top celebrities, including Jennifer Aniston, Sarah Jessica Parker, Tony Bennett, Matt Damon, Madonna, and Ringo Starr. Alexis is here today with her husband, Carl, who, when we first got here the other day, he was introducing himself as the husband, but he's so much more than a husband, an acclaimed attorney, a broadcaster, an entrepreneur, and a professor at Fordham Law School. They also have 3 children, Carl, the fourth, who is here with us today, a graduate of NYU, who has published his own music. He's got a budding music career. He's recorded his own album, and we're very proud of you, Carl. Trevor, who went to high school with my son, Constantine, who's here. Trevor is a junior at Babson College, and he is studying abroad right now in Milan. And then their daughter, Callista, who is a student also following in her mother's footsteps at LaGuardia High School. So we're very proud to have everyone here today, and it is truly my honor to introduce to you a trailblazing woman in her own right, who just happens to be the voice of Lukumi, my dear friend, Alexis Christoforous.
I think he said it all, so I think we're done here today. That was beautiful. Thank you, Nick. And I am so grateful and will forever be grateful that 25 years ago, this September, you called and asked if I would give an interview to the Hellenic Times newspaper, because that really was the beginning of our friendship, and as you said, became a friendship between our families, and so I'm so grateful for that. And actually, Nick's wife, Vula, who's here with us this weekend, is Nuna to my daughter, Callista, so we are indeed family. And I can remember when Lukumi was truly just an idea, even before the books came, and I am so honored to just be a small part of that journey. And as we heard from you the other day, the journey from idea to really a global movement. So congratulations to you, my friend, on all of the success and what is to come. We're excited to see what you do next. So, Your Eminence, Archbishop Elpidoforos, Eminences, Your Graces, the Board of Leadership 100, the members, my fellow honorees this weekend, and distinguished guests, thank you. Thank you for this incredible honor this weekend. Thank you for welcoming me and my family. It's been such a warm welcome this weekend. We've had such a wonderful time getting to know you, getting to know more about what Leadership 100 does, and the important work that you do to preserve and to advance all things Hellenistic, whether it's the culture, the language, Greek education, the ministries of the Greek Orthodox Church. It's important work. We are very lucky to have such a dedicated group of people whose mission it is to make sure that we preserve these things. You know, I've always been very, very proud of my heritage. So, receiving this recognition from this group, from Leadership 100, is very humbling and just an incredible, incredible honor. Nick mentioned some milestones. It's been about 25 years since we've known each other. And we are also celebrating our 25th wedding anniversaries. Two other people, of course, right, to our respective spouses. And it got me thinking, you know, what got me to this point, right? What brought me here to this moment in time with all of you to share this wonderful weekend, which, by the way, you really do throw a pretty awesome Grande. So congratulations to all of you. We've had so much fun this weekend. And I kept coming back to the same thing about what brought me here this weekend, and it was choices. Choices that people made a long time ago, well before I ever came on the scene. Choices that were rooted in faith, courageous choices that were driven by their values. And they set the stage, really, for what was to come after. Like in the early 1940s, when my yaya and papu decided to take their 3 boys and move from everything they knew in Cyprus and Larnaca and Katodris and move to London, England, which a lot of people did back then, right? Especially Cyprus being a British colony. And they had a good life there. My papu owned a restaurant. My yaya was a working mother, and she made that beautiful Cypriot lace, and she sold it to the aristocracy in England. But in the early 1940s, Europe was a difficult place to be. It was wartime, and it was a scary place to be. It was a scary place to raise children. And my yaya, Zoe was her name, which I always thought was very appropriate, life and joy, and that's what she was. We always believed that Zoe had a special relationship with the Panagos, with the Blessed Mother. She was a holy woman, deep faith. And so one night, by the way, they had 2 more sons when they came to London in rather quick succession, so 5 boys now. And they're in London, and they go to bed one night, and Yaya has a dream, a vision. Panagos comes to her and tells her, "Take your children and your husband and leave this place." It woke her up. She was shocked. She was startled. And she woke up my papu in the middle of the night. And she explained to him her dream. Well, you can imagine how well that went over with papu in the middle of the night, right? Ela reyineka, you say treli. Come on, woman, are you crazy? So back to sleep he goes. And she was very upset because she knew this was a message from the Panagos and her husband was not understanding. The next night, they go to bed. Papu is literally thrown from the bed onto the floor. Yaya gets up, startled. What happened? He woke up, he stood up, and as she told the story, all the color went from his face. And he said that Panagia just came to me, and she told me the same thing. We have to leave here. We have to take the kids. We have to leave. So the next morning, they packed what they could, because they couldn't take it all. They took their suitcases, they took their 5 boys, and they went to Birmingham, England, where Yaya had a cousin. And that night, the first night they were out of their home in London and at their new temporary home in Birmingham, the German bombs rained down on London. And one bomb made a direct hit on their house, leveling it. There was a crater in the earth. The house didn't exist. Needless to say, if they didn't make that courageous choice based in faith, I wouldn't be here with all of you today. My beautiful children wouldn't be here, and it would be a very different world for us and for our family. They then went on to America. Papu knew that he needed to get the family to America. So while in Birmingham, they had a few more kids. They had 4 boys and 1 girl. My Aunt Mary, she should have been a saint, with 9 brothers that she had to deal with. And they're in Birmingham, and Papu took his 2 oldest sons, and he came to America. And he worked for a few years really hard, owning restaurants, and saved enough money to bring Yaya and his 8 other children over to the US. And actually, they made history, they made news, because he was able to raise enough money to be able to take his whole family and fly them over on a commercial aircraft to the US. That wasn't happening back in the mid-1950s. And so when they were flying into Newark Airport, it was Newark Airport at the time, Papu was at the airport to greet them. And this made the news, and there was a local reporter who came to meet him there. And she was asking him some questions. And as the plane was coming in for a landing, it was a female reporter. She said, what are you thinking about as that plane comes in? And he said, my whole life is up there on that plane. And I've often wondered all of the emotions that he was going through at that time as he saw his family come in to start a new life once again in a new place. They wound up settling in a few towns in New Jersey until they finally settled in New York City, where my father, by the way, was born in Birmingham, England. They settled in New York City, and that's eventually where he met my mother. Now, my name, Alexis Christoforous, is undoubtedly Greek, right? But it really doesn't tell the whole story, because my mother is Italian-American. And as His Eminence, the metropolis of Sebastian, said to me the other day, he said, that's the best of both worlds, Greek and Italian. I like to think so. And certainly in my house, hear it for the Italians too? Well, they say una faccia, una razza, one face, one race, right? So lots of similarities. And in my house, food was always the center of everything. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this. So I also come from 2 sides. Both sides of my family were tremendous cooks. They owned restaurants, and so I sort of grew up in that atmosphere. So I'm curious, by a show of hands, so my kids don't think I'm crazy, if this sounds familiar to you. You're eating breakfast, and over breakfast, you're talking about what you're going to have for dinner, right? That's how it goes, right? I mean, am I right? Thank you. See, Mom's not crazy. And we also would put adjectives to the food. So I don't know where this came from, but it was, I can make you some nice pancakes and some beautiful eggs with amazing toast. This is what we do with our food. We're very into it. And my grandmother, my Greek grandmother, Josephine, was a chef. She owned her own restaurant in Manhattan for over 2 decades. But I got ahead of myself there with Grandma Josephine, because in the early 1950s, Josephine had the courage to make a choice rooted in faith that changed the course of her history. She decided to leave an abusive husband and raise her daughter, my mother, on her own. Never easy to do, especially in the early 1950s. My great-grandparents, who I was lucky enough to get to know for a time in my life before they passed, watched my mother while my grandmother went out to start her own business. She was my personal trailblazer, an entrepreneur who started her own luncheonette in Lower Manhattan. And she worked hard, and there was a man who came to the luncheonette once a week, then a few times a week, then every day. for a bacon, egg, and cheese. That man became the grandfather I knew. He asked her out one day, handed her a single rose, and the rest was history. They went on to get married and have 3 boys, and he always treated my mother like his own. So I grew up in a house where, like I said, food was a big part of our lives, and the restaurant that they owned was named Josephine's. So she was the chef, my grandfather was the bartender, and their 3 boys were the waiters. And my grandmother, Josephine, was a force to be reckoned with. She was very different from Yaya in the sense Yaya had sort of this calmness about her, always this internal sort of calmness about her. I think you have to be when you're the mother of 10 children during wartime. But Grandma Josephine was really boisterous, and she knew her value when other people didn't see her value. And she would always tell me, at a time when I think people were telling young women, well, marry well, you won't have anything to worry about. She told me, you do well, and so you won't have anything to worry about. And I'm so blessed that both Yaya, Zoe, and thank you, and Josephine got to see me in my career, because they were my biggest cheerleaders. Of course, they would tell me if the outfit I was wearing worked and the jewelry I wore with the outfit worked, not the important things. But they were my biggest cheerleaders, and it always meant so much to me when I knew I was reporting and they were out there watching. So they lived long lives. I had them for a long time. Zoe was with us until she was 92. Josephine was with us until she was 91. So I've been very, very blessed. And she was the one, actually, Grandma Josephine is the one who took me to my first Broadway show. It was Annie, back in the 1970s, for those of you who are with me on that. And it gave me the love of theater, of live theater. I said, what is this? This is amazing. I think I need to do this in my life. I need to have this in my life in some way. Grandma Josephine always taught me what was possible, She taught me that there was so much more than my life in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and that I should dream big. And so I did, which brings me, fast forward a little bit, to some of the choices I had to make in my life that I like to think were rooted in faith. So it comes time for high school, and I'm in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, like I said, and I try out for this school, the Fame School. For those of you who remember the movie Fame, I saw that movie and I said, what is this place? And I have to know this place. So I auditioned for their drama department and I was accepted. And I got the letter home. By the way, kids, it was not digital. There was no internet. So I physically got a letter sent home that I had to open. And it was an acceptance letter. And there were 2 boxes, accept offer, decline offer. And my mother was home at the time. My father was working. And I said, Mom, it's great that I made this school. I feel really good about it. I think I did what I needed to do. I accomplished that. I'm just going to stay in the school I'm at because I have a lot of friends and I'm doing really well and I like it there. So that's where I'm going to stay. So I'm just going to check the box, decline offer. And she said, wait till your father gets home and ask him what he thinks. And of course, being an all-knowing 13-year-old, I said, well, okay, great, I'll wait for Dad, but I know I'm clicking the decline offer box. So Dad came home and I told him that I got accepted and he was so happy for me. And I said, but Dad, I'm going to decline the offer. And he said, no, you can't do that. I said, well, why not? He said, because if you don't take it, you'll always wonder what if. And as a 13-year-old, I kind of took that in. And I thought, he's right. I can't let this opportunity pass me by. So I checked the box, accept offer. I made the courageous choice, rooted in faith, to leave what I knew, the comfortable status quo that I knew at the school I was at that I could have just gone on and done perfectly well at. And I took this plunge to go to the LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts, and it literally changed my life. The people I met there are people that are still in my life to this day. It taught me about grit, about having a tough skin, about being told no, but it's okay anyway. It taught me the value of arts in education, which we've obviously brought on to our own children. Yes, my daughter Callista is there now as a freshman. She's a fine arts major, but also our oldest son, Carl, with us tonight, attended LaGuardia High School as an instrumental music major, which I'm very proud that you kept the legacy going at that school. So it's been quite a journey, and that was a life-changing time in my life. I always say high school was really the perfect dress rehearsal for life. That's what it gave me. And as a kid, growing up in New York City, I knew I always, in addition to being interested in the theater, was always interested in writing and in journalism. I talked a lot as a kid, surprise, surprise, so I thought broadcasting is probably the way to go versus print. I always asked lots of questions. I was a curious child. And I think the Libra in me, and there are lots of Libras in my family, and I know Nick's a Libra too, always wanted to get to the truth. I like when justice is served. Even if it's not always in my favor, at least it was just, it was fair, and it was right. So I thought journalism seems like the right field. So I remember being probably all of 8 or 9 years old and watching TV, and at the time Ernie Anastas was on WABC Channel 7 in New York, and my father, every night as if it was a completely new idea, would say, "Oh, there's Ernie, you know, he's Greek." And I go, "Yeah, Dad, I know he's still Greek, I know, Ernie Anastas is Greek." But I said, "You know, I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to be on TV and do that one day." And the wonderful thing is my parents absolutely believed it, and they had me believe it. It was never a pipe dream, "Oh yeah, okay, Alexis, you'll do that one day." They said, "Okay, yes, we know that you will do that one day." So when it came time for college, I thought, what better place to do this than in New York City, right? The media capital of the world. So I went to NYU, I double majored in journalism and English, and I minored in the classics because that's what a Greek does. And I really enjoyed my minor. And I was fortunate enough to have a professor who really saw my potential and was Michael Ludlam. He's no longer with us, but he was instrumental in helping me get my first job right out of school. I worked at a radio station in Litchfield, Connecticut, a small radio station where I got up at 3 a.m. and I went in and I wrote the news and I reported on the news. And it was a great learning ground for me. It's what they call a non-union shop. So I was able to touch all of the equipment and run my own board and really do a lot of learning there. And by the way, for especially the younger folks in the room, I never got a broadcasting job from handing in a resume, ever. I got broadcasting jobs from relationships I made and I nurtured. And one thing built on the next. So I wound up at Bloomberg Radio at the time. There was no television in the early 1990s. And I start working there and I'm thinking, this is fantastic. I love this company. I'm back in my home city of New York. Fabulous. 4 months later, they changed their format to all business. I go, brother, how am I going to do this? I'm not a finance major. I don't know business. I guess that was that for me. So I remember my boss coming over to me and he said, you know, Alexis, we're going to be changing formats. And I'm thinking, here it comes. He's going to ask me to leave. And I said, no, I know. And he said, so we'd like you to stay on. And I said, oh, really? But, you know, I don't know business news. And he said, oh, that's okay. You know, we like your work ethic. We like your sound. And we'll train you. Train me. I had to make a choice. I could have left and found a job elsewhere, because I was not comfortable covering business news, I'll tell you that. But through my faith, I said, you know what? This is being presented to me for a reason. And I said yes. Another pivotal decision that changed my life. First of all, I met my husband Carl there. So of course that changed everything. And then I also learned business news. I learned how to read an earnings report. I learned about, through just interviewing CEOs on the job, I learned so much. I read the Wall Street Journal and Barron's cover to cover. I made it my business to learn business. And it made all the difference in my career because at that time there were very few women covering business news. I sort of got in at the ground level, if you will. And then I was there when Bloomberg started television. I helped them launch their television product. And they needed a reporter to go down to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And that person was me. And I went down in a sea of men on a very crowded floor at the New York Stock Exchange, which of course those of you who know now, you could ballroom dance on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, but back then it was, you know, jockey for position. They had the specialists and the traders on the floor and they would be, you know, shouting out orders over my head. And I thought, wow, this is exhilarating. And at first, there was some hesitancy. They didn't really want to talk to me. Oh, here's this woman in her heels and her makeup and she's going to play TV for a while. Until we really got to talk, and they understood that I was there to learn, that I was on their turf, and I respected that. And over time, some of these traders on the floor became like brothers to me. They became sources to me for news, and I came to them for many important news stories over the years at the New York Stock Exchange. So it was an incredible time to be covering business news, and I'm forever grateful I made that decision to stay at Bloomberg because it really gave me a niche in my career, which I've taken with me to other places, like at CBS, where I was mainly a business and finance reporter, though I did report on general news as well. And CBS is really where I spent the bulk of my career, 16 years. But fast forward to the past few years, and I've been fortunate enough to be at ABC News, to report alongside some tremendous colleagues, and I'm given the freedom and the resources to cover stories that are important to me, that I believe really make a difference, and that's really a blessing in this industry. And as Nick said, I created a series called Trailblazing Women, in which we shine a light on women who are trailblazers, and they're not household names. They're the women who are doing things quietly, under the radar, that we like to shine a light on because they're really making a difference in their communities and in the world. And this series won a coveted Gracie Award last year, for which I'm very, very honored. Thank you.